My name is Kristian, and for a long time I tried to convince myself that my marriage to Julia was just going through a rough patch. But at some point, the rough patch became my everyday life. Looking back now, I can see how gradual it all was, how the erosion of respect and love happened so slowly that I didn't notice the foundation crumbling beneath my feet until it was almost too late. Julia and I met 7 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. She was radiant that day, wearing an emerald green dress that matched her eyes, laughing at something the bride had said. When she smiled at me across the reception hall, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We dated for 2 years before I proposed on a beach in Greece, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She said yes without hesitation, tears streaming down her face. Those were happy tears then. Real ones. The first 3 years of our marriage were good. Not perfect, no marriage is, but good. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our dreams for the future. We talked about buying a house, maybe having kids someday. I worked as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, and Julia managed a boutique downtown. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We were partners. But then something shifted. It started small. Julia would make jokes about my weight in front of our friends. At first, I laughed it off, told myself she was just being playful, that this was just her sense of humor. "Kristian's really committed to that dad bod, aren't you, honey?" she'd say with a little laugh, patting my stomach at dinner parties. Our friends would chuckle awkwardly, and I'd force a smile, pretending it didn't sting. But the jokes kept coming, and they got sharper, more pointed. Then the complaints started. She criticized everything I did, how I ate, how I dressed, how I worked, how I breathed, how I existed in her space. If I ordered dessert at a restaurant, she'd give me that look, the one that made me feel ashamed for wanting something sweet. If I wore a shirt she didn't like, she'd sigh dramatically and ask if I was really going out like that. If I stayed late at work to finish a project, she'd accuse me of avoiding her. If I came home on time, she'd find something else to be upset about. I felt like nothing I did was ever enough. I started second-guessing every decision, every word, every action. Was I breathing too loudly? Chewing too enthusiastically? Taking up too much space on the couch? I became a ghost in my own home, trying desperately to be smaller, quieter, less of a burden to the woman I loved. I tried to talk to her about it once. It was a Saturday morning, and she was scrolling through her phone while I made us breakfast. "Julia," I said carefully, flipping a pancake, "do you think maybe we could talk about the way we communicate sometimes?" She didn't even look up. "What do you mean?" "Well, sometimes the jokes about my weight, or the comments about what I'm wearing, they hurt a little bit." She finally glanced at me, her expression somewhere between annoyed and incredulous. "Oh my God, Kristian, you're so sensitive. I'm just being honest. Would you rather I lie to you? Besides, if you're that bothered by it, maybe you should actually do something about it instead of complaining." That conversation ended there. I learned not to bring it up again. The months dragged on, and I found myself withdrawing from our friends, from my hobbies, from anything that once brought me joy. I'd gained about 30 pounds over the course of our marriage. Nothing dramatic, but enough that my clothes fit differently, enough that Julia noticed and made sure I never forgot it. I tried going to the gym a few times, but my heart wasn't in it. How could I care about improving myself when the person who was supposed to love me most made me feel worthless no matter what I did? The breaking point came on a Friday evening in late October. Our friends Mark and Sarah were throwing a Halloween party at their place across town. Julia had been excited about it all week, spending hours perfecting her costume. She went as a 1920s flapper, complete with a beaded dress and feather headband. I'd thrown together a simple vampire costume, black clothes, some pale makeup, plastic fangs. "That's what you're wearing?" she asked when I came downstairs, her tone making it clear I'd already disappointed her. "It's a costume party, Julia. I'm dressed up." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Let's just go." The party was in full swing when we arrived. Music thumped through the house, people mingled with drinks in hand, and the energy was festive. For the first hour, things were almost normal. Julia chatted with her girlfriends in the kitchen, while I caught up with Mark about a basketball game we'd both watched. I was actually starting to enjoy myself. Then I overheard Julia talking to her friend Rebecca near the patio door. I'd gone to the bathroom and was making my way back through the crowded hallway when I heard my name. Something in Julia's tone made me stop. "I just don't know how much longer I can do this," Julia was saying, her voice carrying that particular quality it gets when she's had 2 glasses of wine, loose, unfiltered, honest in the cruelest way. "Do what?" Rebecca asked. Deal with Kristian. Look at him. I could hear the disgust in her voice even though I couldn't see her face. He's let himself go completely. The way he eats, the way he looks. I can't stand being with someone this fat anymore. It's embarrassing, honestly. When we go out, I feel like people are judging me for being with him. My blood ran cold. The noise of the party seemed to fade away, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. This wasn't a joke made in front of friends that could be excused as awkward humor. This was what she really thought. This was how my wife truly felt about me. Rebecca said something in response. I couldn't hear what, but Julia laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth. I know, right? I keep trying to drop hints, but he doesn't get it. Or he doesn't care. Either way, I'm done. I didn't go back inside. I didn't confront her. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just walked straight out the front door, got in my car, and drove home alone, tears blurring my vision the entire way. When I got home, something in me finally snapped. Not in an angry, destructive way, but in a clarifying way, like a fog lifting. I'd been living in this state of constant anxiety and self-doubt for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have self-respect. But hearing Julia's words, hearing the pure contempt in her voice when she talked about me to someone else, flipped a switch in my brain. If she didn't respect me, why was I still here? I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, some personal items. I didn't have a clear plan. Maybe I'd stay at a hotel for a few days. Maybe I'd call my brother and crash on his couch. I just knew I couldn't spend another night under the same roof as someone who found my existence so repulsive. But before leaving, a practical thought cut through my emotional haze. Money. I needed to check our finances, to make sure I could stand on my own 2 feet after walking out. Julia and I had a joint checking account that we used for household expenses, plus our individual savings accounts. I pulled up our bank's website on my laptop and logged into the joint account. That's when I noticed it. At first, it looked normal. Mortgage payments, utility bills, grocery store charges, the usual recurring expenses. But as I scrolled further back, patterns started to emerge. Small transfers, $50 here, $100 there, always to an account I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I went back further. 3 months, 6 months, a year. The transfers were there the entire time, carefully spaced out so they wouldn't be obvious on a quick glance at the monthly statements. But added up over 12 months, we were talking about thousands of dollars. Money that should have been going toward our future. The house we'd talked about buying, the dream vacation to Japan we'd been saving for, was being quietly siphoned away into Julia's secret account. I felt sick. The betrayal went deeper than words now. This was calculated, premeditated. While I'd been killing myself trying to be a better husband, trying to be good enough for her, she'd been preparing for a future that didn't include me. I sat there on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for 4 years, staring at the laptop screen until the numbers blurred. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew I could trust completely, my best friend Marcus. Marcus and I had been friends since college, the kind of friendship that survives distance and life changes and everything in between. He was steady, logical, and had never particularly liked Julia, though he'd been too polite to say so outright until now. Kristian? You okay, man? It's almost midnight. His voice was thick with sleep. Marcus, My voice cracked. I hadn't let myself cry yet, but hearing my friend's concerned voice almost broke me. I think my marriage is over. And I think it's even worse than I thought. Talk to me. What happened? I told him everything. The party, Julia's words, the bank statements, the secret account. It all came pouring out in a jumbled rush. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when I finally finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Kristian, he said carefully, I think you need a private investigator. What? Why would I? Because if she's moving money around behind your back, what else is she hiding? You need to know exactly what you're dealing with before you make any decisions. And if you end up getting divorced, you're going to need evidence of what she's been doing with your joint finances. The word divorced hit me like a physical blow. Was that really where we were headed? But even as I asked myself the question, I knew the answer. There was no coming back from what I'd heard tonight. No amount of couples counseling or heartfelt conversations could undo the contempt in Julia's voice when she talked about me to her friend. You have someone you'd recommend? I asked quietly. Yeah, actually. Give me a second. I heard rustling, then the click of a keyboard. Okay, there's a guy named Daniel Reeves. He's done work for a couple of people at my firm. Discreet, thorough, reasonable rates. I'll text you his information. Thanks, Marcus. Hey, Kristian. Whatever happens, you've got people who care about you. You're not alone in this, okay? I managed to say okay before hanging up, even though I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, I called Daniel Reeves. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown that afternoon. I'd barely slept, going over everything in my head again and again, wondering if I was overreacting, if there was some innocent explanation for the bank transfers. But deep down, I knew better. Daniel was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes that had clearly seen their share of human misery. We sat in a corner booth, and I explained the situation as clinically as I could manage. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and didn't seem at all surprised by anything I told him. Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, he said, closing his notebook. The good news is, if there's something to find, I'll find it. The bad news is, well, I usually find something. How long will it take? Depends on what I'm looking for. Financial irregularities, I can probably sort out in a week or so. If you want me to look into her personal activities, her movements, who she's spending time with, that'll take longer. 2, maybe 3 weeks. I thought about Julia's words at the party. I'm done. She hadn't just been venting, she'd been stating a fact. Whatever was happening, it had been happening for a while. Do it all, I said. I need to know everything. Daniel nodded. I'll need some information from you, her full name, date of birth, phone number if you have it, places she frequents, that sort of thing. And I'll need a retainer. We worked out the details, I paid him half up front, and then I went back to the house to wait. Julia had texted me around 2 in the morning, annoyed that I'd left the party without telling her. I'd responded with something vague about not feeling well. She'd come home around 3, and I'd pretended to be asleep on the couch. She hadn't bothered to wake me or ask if I was okay. That told me everything I needed to know. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went through the motions, went to work, came home, made small talk with Julia over dinner, while knowing that everything was about to change. Julia seemed oblivious, or maybe she just didn't care. She was on her phone constantly, smiling at messages, sometimes stepping into another room to take calls. Each time she did, a little voice in my head whispered what I already suspected, but didn't want to confirm. Daniel called me on a Wednesday afternoon, exactly 15 days after our first meeting. Can you come to my office? I have your report ready. My stomach dropped. You found something. I found a lot of things, but we should discuss this in person. I told my boss I had a family emergency and left work early. Daniel's office was in a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. His receptionist led me to a conference room where Daniel sat with a thick folder in front of him. Before I show you this, he said gently, I want you to know that what's in here is going to be difficult to see. If you need to take breaks, that's fine. If you need to process, that's fine too. There's no rush. Just show me. He opened the folder. The first section was financial records, printouts of bank statements, transfer receipts, credit card statements I didn't know existed. Daniel walked me through it all. The personal account I'd discovered wasn't the only one. Julia had opened 3 separate accounts over the past 18 months, all without my knowledge. She'd been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts, sometimes directly, sometimes by paying for personal expenses with joint funds, and then reimbursing herself from our account into her private ones. Over the past year and a half, she's moved approximately $43,000 into accounts you don't have access to, Daniel said. That doesn't include the credit cards she's been using for personal expenses. Those add up to another $12,000 or so in debt that you don't know about. I felt dizzy. $43,000. That was more than half of what we'd saved together. Money I'd earned from long hours and weekend projects, money that was supposed to be building our future. There's more, Daniel said quietly. He pulled out another section of the folder. Photographs. My hands shook as I looked at them. Julia, laughing over dinner with a man I didn't recognize. Julia, holding hands with the same man as they walked down a street I recognized as being near her boutique. Julia, kissing him outside what appeared to be an apartment building. His name is Trevor Michaels, Daniel said. He's a commercial real estate agent, 34 years old, divorced. They met about 8 months ago at a networking event Julia attended for boutique owners. Based on what I've been able to determine, they've been seeing each other regularly since then. At least twice a week, sometimes more. I stared at the photographs, trying to reconcile the woman in them, glowing, happy, fully present, with the cold, critical person I'd been living with. This was who Julia was when she wasn't with me. This was what joy looked like on her face, an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The apartment in this photo, Daniel continued, is his. She's been there multiple times. I have dates and times if you need them for legal purposes. Legal purposes. Divorce. This was really happening. There's one more thing, Daniel said, and his expression was particularly grim. Based on the financial patterns and some other evidence, I believe Julia has been planning to leave you for several months now. The money she's been moving is likely meant to fund her transition out of the marriage. She's been preparing her exit strategy while maintaining the appearance of normalcy at home. That hurt worst of all somehow. Not just that she'd cheated, not just that she'd stolen from me, but that she'd been planning this elaborate betrayal while I'd been desperately trying to save a marriage that was already dead in her mind. I left Daniel's office with the folder under my arm, feeling like I was moving through water. Everything seemed surreal, distant. I drove home on autopilot, parked in the driveway, and sat in the car for 20 minutes trying to decide what to do next. Finally, I went inside. Julia's car wasn't there yet. She usually got home around 7. I had time. I went upstairs to our bedroom and finished packing the suitcase I'd started 2 weeks ago. Then I sat on the couch and waited, the folder on the coffee table in front of me. Julia came home at 7:15, distracted as usual, scrolling through her phone as she walked through the door. She looked up, saw me sitting there with the folder, and her expression flickered, just for a second, with something that might have been fear. "What's this?" she asked, trying for casual curiosity but not quite managing it. "Open it." She hesitated, then set down her purse and picked up the folder. I watched her face as she flipped through it. The bank statements first, a flash of panic in her eyes. Then the photographs. The color drained from her face. "Kristian, I can explain." "Don't." My voice was steady, calmer than I'd expected. "I don't want to hear explanations or excuses. I know what you've been doing. I know about Trevor. I know about the money. I know everything." She set the folder down with trembling hands. For the first time in years, Julia looked uncertain. Vulnerable. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep draining our accounts until you had enough to leave? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I heard you," I said. "At the party. I heard what you said to Rebecca about me. About how embarrassing I am. How disgusting you find me. And honestly, Julia, that hurt worse than any of this." I gestured at the folder. "Because I spent years trying to be good enough for you, trying to fix whatever was wrong with me that made you so unhappy. But the problem was never me, was it? It was you. Your contempt, your dishonesty, your selfishness." Tears were streaming down her face now, but they didn't move me the way they once would have. "So you decided to cheat and steal instead of having an honest conversation? I know it's wrong. I know I messed up. But maybe we can fix this? Maybe if we go to counseling," she whispered. "No." I stood up, picked up my suitcase from where I'd left it by the stairs. "I'm done, Julia. I'm done being made to feel worthless. I'm done walking on eggshells in my own home. I'm done with all of it. Where are you going?" "I have a lawyer meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. I suggest you get one too. You can keep the folder. Those are copies. My lawyer has the originals, along with documentation of every dollar you've moved and every lie you've told. This marriage is over." She followed me to the door, still crying, still pleading. But I didn't look back. I walked out into the cool evening air, put my suitcase in the car, and drove away from the house, from the marriage, from the life I'd been clinging to. That night, sitting in a hotel room with takeout and a beer, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. Not happy exactly, there was still too much pain for that. But free. Free from the constant criticism, the walking on eggshells, the desperate attempt to be enough for someone who had decided I never would be. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. Julia tried to fight me on the division of assets, but the evidence Daniel had gathered was too damning. She'd committed fraud, adultery, and had been planning to abandon the marriage while hiding assets. In the end, she walked away with far less than she'd been planning to take, and I got most of what we'd built together. I'm writing this now from my new apartment, a smaller place but mine. All mine. I've started going to therapy, working through the damage that marriage did to my self-esteem. I've reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from. I've even started going to the gym, not because anyone is shaming me into it, but because I want to feel strong again. Marcus told me the other day that I seem lighter, that some weight I'd been carrying is gone. He's right. The weight Julia put on my shoulders, the shame, the inadequacy, the constant feeling that I was failing, is gone. I'm rebuilding myself from the ground up, and this time, I'm doing it for me. Looking back, I'm almost grateful I left that party early. Grateful I overheard those cruel words. Because sometimes you need to hear the truth, even when it shatters you, to finally break free from a situation that's been destroying you slowly from the inside. That chapter of my life is closed now. The book isn't finished. I'm only 36, with hopefully many more years ahead of me. But that particular story is over. And you know what? I'm okay with that. More than okay. For the first time in years, I'm excited about what comes next. Excited to meet someone who will see my worth instead of finding ways to diminish it. Excited to build a life based on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of criticism and contempt. The night I left the party early was the night my life changed forever. But not because I discovered my wife's betrayal, because I discovered something more important, that I deserved better. That self-respect isn't selfish, and walking away from someone who makes you feel small isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. Finally, after all those years, I chose myself, and that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.